Hello there. I'm Kaneisha Grayson, founder and CEO of The Art of Applying. And today I have with me David Vasquez, the star of our most popular YouTube video. But today's video is actually not about David, it's about me. So I have asked David to interview me about my application process and starting The Art of Applying, because those of you out there watching our YouTube channel have asked, and we're here to deliver. Hi, David.
Hi, Kanisha. So excited to flip the script.
Yes, I'm very excited to flip the script. And I also just wanted to say you have totally flipped the script and you've gone from like clean cut finance guy to like super cool rock star looking guy. So that's super interesting. I think we'll have to do a separate video one day about your transformation and what you're up to these days. But thank you for interviewing me, and just happy to answer the questions that I generated with ChatGPT, and also any questions that you have for me. And for the person watching this who is like, but who is David besides a cool rock star? So David worked with us at the Art of Applying back in 2016 or 2017 to apply to grad school. And he got into Stanford for business school with a full scholarship from the Knight-Hennessy Scholars Program. He got into Stanford for law school, which was covered by the Knight-Hennessy, and then also Harvard Business School. And then I believe you got a full scholarship to Harvard Kennedy School as
Yeah,
well. So just
yeah. Good
outstanding results.
times.
Yeah.
Good times. Yeah, I think you've helped so many people get into graduate school. And I think the first question we have to ask is, what inspired you to go on this journey for yourself, to go and pursue an MBA at Harvard and your policy degree at the Kennedy School?
Yes, absolutely. So I applied to grad school during my senior year of college at Pomona College, a small liberal arts school in Southern California. And the summer of my junior year, I look back and I was actually suffering from depression. I think I was suffering from depression and maybe some sort of like ADHD burnout, because I am now diagnosed with ADHD, but I didn't know that I had ADHD back then. And an undiagnosed ADHD person who's very ambitious and smart is always going to burn out because you're doing way too much and you have your hands in everything and you just want to be involved in everything. And so my junior year summer, I was supposed to do two different internships. First of all, that's already the first red flag. It's like, why do you have two internships? And I just was like, I can't do either of these. I need to go home. And so I was on campus and I moved home to Austin. I grew up in a low income, primarily Mexican and Mexican American neighborhood. So I just moved right on in with my parents and was just feeling really down, barely can get out of bed. I was also coming back from study abroad from Cuba. So it was a big transition. And so I just asked my college, hey, I know you guys gave me this funding to do a research project, but I'm not doing too good. Can I use that funding to volunteer at a nonprofit in my neighborhood called River City Youth Foundation? That nonprofits, their focus is on helping the low income children of the neighborhood, giving us a place to hang out, get fed, use computers, that kind of thing. And that organization was started by Mona Gonzales, who is a treasure for the Austin community. Anyway, I went there and was like, hey, Mona, I'm just here to help whatever I can do. My school says I can use my stipend from my research project to volunteer, so I am at your service. I knew Mona because I was one of the kids growing up in the neighborhood who would go to River City Youth Foundation. And then I volunteered there in high school. And so that just felt like a home base to go back to when I was suffering from this kind of depression and ADHD burnout. And she said, great, we're having a welcome back to school, stop the violence concert at the end of the summer when school's about to begin. And we anticipate 300 to 500 attendees. We have a $0 budget and we need food, drinks, and door prizes for all, of course, how nonprofits want you to do the impossible. We need food, drinks, and door prizes for 300 to 500 people. And I was like, got it, I'm on it. And I just made myself a little spreadsheet and started calling up pizza places, calling up restaurants, calling up other types of small businesses to ask them to donate to this cause. And Mona was watching me and how methodically I worked and went about this project and how I was able to achieve almost this kind of impossible project or task that she gave me. She sat me down one day and she said, Kaneisha, what are your plans for after college? And I had already won a scholarship from the Rotary Club to spend a year in Ghana. So I did know I was going to do that. And I said, I don't know. I'm going to move to Africa. And then I don't know. And I had heard of the Kennedy School, which we called back then KSG, Kennedy School of Government, because one of my close friends who was a year ahead of me in school, he had applied to the Kennedy School. I had helped him with his application in terms of editing his essays for Princeton and the Kennedy School. And he got into the schools, he got in with full rides, and he got an external full scholarship too. So it was just like a sweepstakes of success. And so I was like, wow, I already knew I was good at helping people get into schools because I had helped my friends in high school apply to college. But I was like, I guess I could go to the Kennedy School. I think I could go there for nonprofit management or something like that. And she said to me, okay, that sounds good. I think you should also consider going to business school. And I literally Googled, what is an MBA? And I saw it said, do you want to be a leader? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, do you want to help change the world? I'm like, yes. And then I started clicking around and I saw on the career website that the average salary coming out of HBS, now this is clearly back in 2005, and this is also consulting, but it was like $130,000. And I was like, because that was at the time more than what both of my parents made, what I would call probably in the peak of their career combined. I didn't know anyone or that I knew of that made over $100,000. And they're telling me if I go to this school, I could make that much money in my first job. Sign me up. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to apply to Harvard Kennedy School, to KSG, and I'm going to apply to Harvard Business School. And then I started looking into Stanford and I was like, oh, that's where I belong. Like the touchy-feely place in California is where I belong. And I had also visited Stanford several times while I was in college and even thought about transferring to Stanford while I was in college.
Mm.
And there were several things that felt so serendipitous, it meant I had to apply. So here are the things that happened. One, Harvard and Stanford, it was the first year they were letting people apply to the MBA program right out of college. It was free to apply. If you didn't get in, they would tell you why you didn't get in. And I was just like, that's amazing. And then the last thing is that Mona, that executive director who told me I should consider business school, she said, we have one board member who's gone to HBS and he recently graduated. And she told me his name, and he had been my summer camp counselor in high school. And so it was just like, what? Like, I know someone who went to Harvard Business School, and it's going to be free to apply, and they'll tell me why I didn't get in. So it felt like this is meant to be. And I truly felt like I am going to get into these schools because they wouldn't be like rolling out the red carpet if I wasn't going to get in. And I used to say that in one of my classes in HBS, and my professor pulled me aside and was like, you need to stop saying that. It makes people feel bad. People work really hard to get in here. And I'm like, I worked really hard too. I just really felt sure it was meant to be and that it was going to happen. And so that is how I made the decision to apply. And so I spent my senior year of college first semester really focused on studying for the GMAT because I'm 40 and this is way back in the day. I had a CD that I bought from the used bookstore, a Princeton Review CD. So I did self-study, which I don't really recommend. I got the exact same score, 620, after 6 to 8 weeks of diligent studying as I got on day one. So I don't recommend self-study if you are not already testing in the high 600s on your diagnostic. And then I wrote all my essays, lost them all to some computer glitch, wrote them again. I sent them to the one person I knew who went to HBS, that camp counselor. I was writing about some pretty heavy, traumatic stuff because I went to a small liberal arts college and we talk openly about those things. And he was like, no, this is Harvard. We don't talk about those things. I feel that Harvard has changed quite a bit now, or the world has changed to where We do talk more openly about mental health, sexual assault, trauma, things like that. But back in the early 2000s, that was not the kind of stuff that could be in your application without raising a lot of eyebrows and red flags. So then I rewrote my essays again and applied.
That's amazing. Sometimes things feel like destiny.
That's
So,
right. It did. It felt like destiny, truly.
it's amazing. And Kanisha, even just hearing your story now, it's clear that you've always been a powerhouse, but I have a lot of questions about the experience of choosing to apply. It sounded like right before that summer, right before you worked with that nonprofit in your community, that you were experiencing those feelings of burnout and depression. How did you handle like the logistics of actually being able to put together that application going back to school while also juggling being a full-time student in your senior year?
Yes, great question. I would say that applications and applying for anything is really my strength. I have a lot of experience in applying for things. I had to apply to go to the magnet middle school that I went to. I had to apply to go to the magnet high school that I went to. I was like a super turbo nerd in high school. I was still like cute, but I was like a super turbo nerd in high school. And so I was always in the career services office in high school and college. And when I say always, I really mean like several times a week, asking if there are any scholarships I can apply to. And this is even before the scholarships would be on the internet. They would just be these note cards that would get sent to high schools to post in their offices. And so I would go check where the new note cards were that I could apply for scholarships because I was like, I'm not trying to leave with all these student loans. And my parents were going to help pay for college, but I also understood that I would like the college to be covered as much as possible. So I just want to say that applying to things is my strength. Back when I was applying, even if there was someone you could pay to help you apply, that's not something I probably would have done because I am so strong at applying to things and being organized and following through the process. However, there are all kinds of things I'm not good at that I pay people to help me with. In terms of keeping it all organized, I would just say that when an ADHD person is interested in something, that thing is more important than anything else. So it's not even really easy to forget. I also got a lot of inspiration from a website at the time called MBA Diversity. I don't believe it's an active website anymore, but it was a huge influence on me. They had various diverse MBA candidates. My favorite one was Marquise, who did go to Stanford, and they were just blogging their application journey. This is 2005, 2006. I started blogging my application journey 2005, 2006, and being able to have these friends in my head in Marquise and the other applicants really helped me stay on track because most of my other friends were applying to jobs. And so there were just a few of us that I was close to that were very intensively applying to graduate school.
Gotcha. And it sounds like there was a lot of manual investigation and uncovering to find some
Yeah.
of the resources you might need to help you apply. But could you talk a little bit more about what resources were most helpful outside of just mbadiversity.com and some of your own research? What other resources were you using to
Yeah.
really get you wanting to apply?
Absolutely. So I was reading the school websites. The schools were not running information sessions online or webinars online. It was all in person. So I was driving into LA to go to the in person Harvard Business School info session, the in person Stanford info session. I also reached out to people that were at the schools, especially if they were doing a joint degree. I may have even emailed the schools to ask them to connect me with people. The beautiful thing about when I applied is I was so young and so brazen and so close to having applied to college. It was only just 4 years ago that I was asking for all kinds of things that I didn't know one doesn't do. So
Mm.
when I got invited to interview to Harvard and Stanford, I asked them to pay for me to fly there because I was like, that's how it was when I was applying to college. They paid, they flew me in for the weekend, they covered all my housing and food. Surely you're going to pay. And what's really lovely is they didn't balk at my request. They were just like, no, we don't do that. And I was like, okay, so clearly you have to be rich to apply to these schools because you have to fly there in order to even interview. I have a faint memory, I think, that Harvard Business School offered me the possibility to only interview you like on the phone or Skype or something like that. But deep down, I knew, no, they want me to go visit. So let me do it. And then Stanford, they assigned me an alumni interview in my local area. So I was in school in the LA area. And one of those other destined, meant to be things is that the Stanford alumna who did my interview, she did recommend me to be admitted. I was waitlisted at Stanford. And when I got into HBS, even though Stanford was where I like most wanted to go, I was like, I'm not doing any more work. So I was just like, I'm going to the Kennedy School, I'm going to HBS.
Yeah.
But that Stanford interviewer, when it was time for me to do my MBA internship, I wanted to do a marketing role and I wanted to be in LA because I also had some like TV interests. Like I was like, I want to be
Mm.
the next Oprah, but the Kaneisha, yeah. And so I reached out to my Stanford interviewer to ask her what the process was like to work at the extremely large Fortune 100 company that she worked at. And I ended up getting an offer from that company for my summer internship, and she was my manager. So even though I didn't go to Stanford, my Stanford interviewer ended up being my manager at my MBA internship. So
That's
I
amazing.
tell these stories to just say that there are signs we receive in life that say, go for it, try it. This is for you. Sometimes the sign is something so big, like the one person you know who went to HBS as your summer counselor. But sometimes
Yeah.
the sign is smaller, like you are searching for information and then you find this video and you're just like, oh my goodness, I love these people. I vibe with them so much. Let this video be your sign that you found this video and you had no idea who I was. You had no idea who David was. And now you're getting to watch it and you feel like you're like hanging out with your friends. Let that be your sign. So, yeah.
Kanisha, like I have to like, yes. I don't know if you remember this. When I was applying to the Knight-Hennessy fellowship, there had never been a class before. No one really knew what it was about. And I had found out through a random social media ad because I must have been Googling how to pay for my MBA 100 times a day. And the reason why I applied was because Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, was the one funding it. And I was like, I used to sell sneakers as a kid to pay for my high school education. This is a sign. And I think it's really powerful when you can attach yourself to something like destiny to really push yourself forward. So it's amazing that was the same for you as well. Um,
Absolutely. And even David, the way that we met. So I was doing this global speaking tour to try and gain more visibility for myself in the art of applying. And I believe it was the LA stop of the tour. It got canceled, I even think. But your friend was at the New York stop of the tour and told you to go to the LA stop. But I canceled the LA stop and you reached out really bummed that I had canceled it. Maybe you even went there to the location. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Let me give you a free call. So we did a free call. And then you signed up. And then you were like, I would really like to do some nonprofit stuff. And everyone says it's a mistake. And I'm like, no, I will help you transition out of the intense finance bro lifestyle. You moved back to New York City and took on a new role. Even the way we met was serendipitous. Yeah.
for sure. That's incredible. I think we've covered a lot of the logistics of your decision to apply, how that all worked. But as this is all about telling a compelling story and being able to really dig deep in yourself to be able to convey who you are and your essence on paper. So could you talk a little bit about that process, putting together those application materials to be able to tell your story? What did it look like from start to finish? And any advice or thoughts that you have in reflecting back on that journey?
Yes. Back in 2005, you had to write around 8 essays for Harvard Kennedy School. Then you had to write around 6 essays for Harvard Business School. So it was a ton of essays. And then you had to get 3 letters of recommendation for the Kennedy School and 2 letters of recommendation for the business school. Then Stanford had, I believe, 3 essays and they were completely different than the essays asked by Harvard. So it was a lot of essays. That wasn't that intimidating to me because I'm a strong writer. I'm a writer first and foremost at heart. I would say I'm a writer, a teacher, and a on-screen personality. Maybe even add like a motivational cheerleader type person.
Yeah.
So those are my four little personal brands, avatar, whatever. And since the writer part of me is so strong, it wasn't hard for me to produce that amount of content. It was hard for me to understand that the essays for business school and for policy school, yes, they should be personal. Yes, they should be specific and detailed. But the personal things you share do need to tie into how they affect how you will be a leader and a manager and a change maker. Whereas I was more accustomed to essays being confessionals, but that's not what they were looking for. So I'm really glad that I did have that camp counselor slash HBS grad able to read my essays and very gently be like, oh, honey, no, and rewrite those. The essay writing process was not the hardest part for me of the application. I would say the hardest part for me of the application was studying for the test
Mhm.
while doing my regular coursework as a Black Studies major. I got my worst grades while I was
Mhm.
applying to grad school. And it was like, no, that's when my grades need to be as strong as possible. And so that was
Mm.
definitely a little bit of a setback, but I was just so distracted by the application process, by social life on campus, trying to make the most of senior year and all that. I would say the most challenging part for me was the time management, but I was
Mhm.
also so energized by the idea of going to these schools that I was okay with trying to balance all of it.
Yeah. Kanisha, one thing that attracted me to the art of applying and to you was a lot of things that you're describing. Your GMAT score wasn't perfect.
Mm,
It sounds like you had some struggles in undergrad. It,
yeah.
it was an unconventional approach that you took, but you were so clearly so confident in when you were applying. How would you describe your kind of secret sauce when you were going through the application process? And how can we learn from that as folks who are trying to follow in those footsteps?
Absolutely. I would say, and you've actually already said it, is my confidence. I am a very confident person. At times, of course, confidence can veer into arrogance, right? So that's the shadow side of confidence. And
Mhm.
that is a part of my life and a constant journey to stay confident, but not arrogant. So
Yeah.
I would say that my confidence really shines through. I would say my humor is very disarming for people and very effective for influence. I'm also very candid and open. A lot of times, people who are successful in achieving something, they're actually very cagey and vague about how they achieve their success, which makes other people watching their success feel so confused and wondering if it could ever happen for them. And I'm much closer to an open book about the things that I've accomplished in my personal life, my professional life, academically, because how else will people learn, right? Unless you share candidly. And also, it's fun for me to share about my journey. Like doing this video is fun for me. Like, yes, it's for my business, but it's fun to be having this conversation with you and to
Yeah.
be connecting with you after all these years. And so I think all those things, the confidence, the humor, the candor, I would say also very clear on who I am, what I'm about, what I want to do. In fact, in my essay way back in 2005 to graduate school, what I said I wanted to do was to start a consulting firm full of diverse consultants, and we would leverage our unique strengths, each consultant, to help businesses, right? The art of applying is so close to that, right?
Yeah.
It's so close to that vision. We're helping people get into grad school, but it's so close to that vision. A fun fact is that before I went to grad school, I had my friend Carla make me a MySpace page for helping people apply to college. And so that is
Mm.
actually the predecessor to the art of applying is my sparkly animated MySpace page where people could come and pay me to help them apply to college. I think I got one client and her sister ended up being a client of the art of applying a decade or more later. So that's very
That's
fun.
incredible.
My therapist, she calls it my star power. I have a lot of star power. I think you do too. That's part of the reason why I asked you to be my interviewer. Of course, the results that you achieved are amazing, but also there's something that comes through energetically in these videos that people really like, which is why, as of the filming of this video, your interview has 11,000 views or something like that. Yeah, I would say that those are some of the qualities that the school saw in me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think, your point around authenticity and owning that even with how you are gaining success is so important. I remember talking to you and how candid you were about your journey. I was like, "Oh, this is the person that will absolutely be able to help me." It's something that I think is really special about you and about the business as well.
Thank you.
Wrapping up the application part of your journey, can you talk a little bit about some of the other elements of putting that application together? So, letters of recommendation, reflecting back on the interview, and lastly, as you look at the entirety of the approach, is there anything that you would have done differently, even though you had so much success, that folks can take away as they listen to your story?
So the first thing I would share is my stats because I realized I didn't share those. I
Yeah.
went to Pomona College. I turned 22 by the time I submitted the application. I had a ton of on-campus leadership experience as well as summer internships. My internships were primarily teaching low-income youth with the nonprofit Breakthrough Collaborative that I still love. And my GPA was between 3.5 and 6. And then my major was Black Studies. In terms of the other parts of the application, the letters of recommendation, that part wasn't really difficult for me because the academic letter, I was still in college, so I could just go to my professors. And then for the professional ones, I went to people in the administration of the college for whom I had
Mhm.
worked for like either my work study job or an extracurricular activity. In terms of the test, I did the self study. I only gave myself time to take the test once because I did really well on the SAT. My combined highest score was a 1450. I was one of the
Mm.
highest scoring African Americans in the nation and got an award for it. So I was very arrogant and I thought I didn't need to take the GMAT more than once. The SAT went up to 1600. So 1450, shouldn't I have gotten a 725? Wow. No, it did not translate. And I'm not sure why it didn't translate, but I had gotten a 1450 on the SAT and a 32 on the ACT. Those are really high scores. But then I only gave myself the opportunity to take the GMAT once days before the deadline. And my score popped out and it said 620. And I said, well, guess I'm applying to Harvard Business School, Harvard Kennedy School, and Stanford with some C's I just got and with a 620. And I just really hope they're okay with this. And I was admitted to what was back then called the Harvard Business School Deferred Admit Program. My class named it HBS 2+2. And then I was waitlisted at Stanford Deferred Admit. And then I was just outright admitted to Harvard Kennedy School. One note that I'm remembering is that I was conditionally admitted to Harvard Business School on the condition that I take some supplemental coursework. But
Mhm.
because I was going to start my degree at Harvard Kennedy School, I just took it as some of my classes at the Kennedy schools. I
Right.
took corporate finance in Harvard Yard with the undergrads, and it was truly horrible. I'm a first year at the Kennedy School. I sat in the front row with some other graduate student friends. I would ask questions, and the undergrads would laugh at me, like openly laugh. I don't know if they were laughing at the way I was asking a question. I don't know if they were laughing at the professor. I don't know. I didn't speak to any of the other students in the class except for the other graduates who sat in the
Mhm.
front row with me, like so confused and like feverishly writing. And I didn't even feel sad when they laughed at me because I'm like, y'all are trying to get where I'm at. So I'm not even worried about it. The application form was pretty in depth. So I hope I didn't work on it at the last minute. I'm not sure if I did or didn't, but I do remember taking it very seriously and understanding that the application form is not just a form, it's another
Yeah.
important part of the application process. And then for my interview, I remember cramming for my HBS interview in the lobby, trying to like feverishly read the Wall Street Journal
Mhm.
and the New York Times, thinking it was going to be this hardcore interview. But it was really a very softball, get to know you, just checking on some things in your application interview, very friendly. I actually remember the last question was so easy and caught me so off guard. So this is how it went. Okay, well, this has been really nice to learn about you. I mean, you just do so much. What do you do for fun? And I just froze because I thought, when is she going to ask me about the mortgage crisis that I just crammed about? I don't know what a mortgage backed security is, but I know something's wrong. And
Mm.
I was so caught off guard. I just squeaked out, I go dancing. True, I don't go dancing. I don't like the club. I just was like, so caught off guard because I was waiting for her
Mm.
to quiz me about the hard stuff I had just crammed for. My Stanford interview was like a long 2-hour fun laughing dinner. For some reason, I knew that it would be more laid back, but I was scared and thought the HBS one would be like super hard. But yeah, I felt very confident that I would get into the schools after my interviews and my application.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's always that last question at HBS. They threw me off guard too. Cool. Yeah, I think they asked me like, "What would you do if you don't get in to HBS?" And
Yeah.
literally the first thing in my head was like, "Die." I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna like fall apart. Took me a second, and I was like, everything I put in the application just a lot harder.
You go.
I want to accomplish everything I want to accomplish. It's just you're gonna make it harder on me.
Yep.
I really hope I get in, make this a little bit easier.
I want to
But
talk,
that,
David, about why they asked me my question and why I think they asked you your question.
yeah.
I think they asked me my question to make sure that I know how to have fun because so much of going to a top graduate school is about the relationships and the friendships you make and the network and all that. So they just wanted to make sure that I wasn't just going to be hardcore stuck in achiever mode and that I would really leave with some friendships. And I think for you, the reason they asked is that they just see your profile and they're like, this guy is a shoo-in. He's going to get in everywhere. Does he have a plan for if he doesn't get in? And how does he react? How does he react to the prospect of not getting in? Does he get angry? Does he feel entitled to get in? And I think that answer is good, right? Because it shows that you are confident and determined, but that you also understand that there's a real benefit to going to these programs. So I did just want to touch on why I think they asked me that question and why I think they asked you your question.
Yeah, to your point around like the application process, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that you gave me and that changed the way I viewed the whole thing was how do you bring your whole self into this application? And I think people are so focused oftentimes on putting their achievement self forward. And it's really important to think about then what supplements that. So if I'm writing about my achievements, can my letters of recommendation talk about me as a person and maybe some of the fun
Mhm.
things I bring to the
Yeah.
table as a part of the team? So I think to your point, those interviews were definitely like the last, let's test where we aren't sure about this person. Those are all great times.
Yes. And I
Um,
also want to say to
yeah.
people watching this that, yes, me and David have a lot of charisma, a lot of confidence, but that is something you can borrow from people who have a lot of it and hold on to the borrowed confidence long enough until it's yours. And so when people work with us at the Art of Applying, we are not looking for people to be TV ready, charismatic, big personalities. No, you can be introverted, you can be awkward, you can be insecure, unsure, because even those of us who present as very confidently, we still have our insecurities, maybe even more than the average person. But I just wanted to say that so that people aren't thinking, oh, the only way I can work with Kaneisha and her team at the Art of Applying is if I'm this big personality or if I am a shoe in or anything like that. Like, really what we want is for you to come as you are and for us to help put, as David said, that full person in the application, that authentic, holistic representation of you and help you get into the best schools possible with as much money as possible. But it is not about being a version of David or a version of me. It's about being the best version of you.
That's right. I don't know if you remember when we first met. I still wasn't sure like what vision I was going to talk about it. I was in finance when we met, and I was like having my existential crisis that I didn't want to be there. And I think a lot of the benefit of working with you was the first few months is about shedding whatever you think people want to see
Yeah.
and really breaking that vision of that person. So you may think that the application wants you to show this charismatic side of you, but if that's not who you are, like it's important to work with people early to kind of get over that and then to find the real authentic voice. And truly, I think for me, the most confidence came when I was like, no, this is it. This is me. on paper.
Yeah.
And I feel confident walking in with this story. And I'm sure that I think I've changed a lot in the past 6, 7, 8 years since we met. And part of it was that learning kind of to sit authentically in those stories. And the art of applying was really helpful in dispelling what I thought people wanted to see, show up as I was. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes. It's very important to me that at the Art of Applying, we don't craft a different self for each school. One, that is too much to try and remember because you need to interview for each school, for business school anyway.
Mhm.
Two, you are guessing and really basing things on generalizations and stereotypes, which are generalizations and stereotypes for a reason, but they're not globally applicable.
Can you talk about having that acceptance in hand, but knowing that we had a few years before you would even
Mhm.
get to grad school?
Yes. So I got in spring break of my senior year. I was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, on spring break when I got my Harvard Kennedy School
Wow.
acceptance. And then I was at college when I got my Stanford waitlist and Harvard Business School acceptance. So the whole rest of senior year is fun, party. I'm all set. Gonna go to Ghana, then I'm going to Harvard. Like, what? I had also been accepted into SEO's philanthropy program, and I had been rejected the previous year. So I was
Mhm.
very excited about spending a summer in New York. I worked for the Association of Black Foundation Executives as well as Hispanics in Philanthropy. I worked on Broad Street, so down there in the financial district. But my job was so balanced and easy, just 9 to 5, just so easy and fun. So that was great. Then I went to Accra, Ghana. The Rotary Club that gave me the scholarship had actually advised me, Kaneisha, we know you're super motivated. We know you're going to want to do some sort of graduate degree because we're paying for everything. We think you should just volunteer and do your required speeches, things like that. You don't need to do a graduate degree. You do have the opportunity to take classes at the school and to live at the school, the University of Ghana at Legon, but don't do a graduate degree. And I was like, yeah, I'm getting a free master's degree. So I applied to and got into the Master's of African Studies. And that degree kicked my butt so hard, I dropped out. So I dropped out. So I actually dropped out of a master's degree. I was in
Wow.
the master's degree in African Studies at the University of Ghana. And it was so hard. It was really the beginning of a PhD program, is what I would say. I was like, I'm in beautiful West Africa. I do not want to be in the library. I want to be frolicking in a waterfall. I very tearfully dropped out of the program, but I was allowed to stay still living on campus. I was hanging around at the college, going all the fun stuff, but I wasn't going to classes anymore, but still
Mhm.
doing my volunteer work, which I really enjoyed, and doing my ambassadorial speeches, which were speeches at local Rotary clubs about the United States and engaging in cultural exchange, which is what the scholarship was supposed to be for. I met two really important people to my life during that time. I met the man who I would later marry and then divorce, or rather, I suppose he left me and then I divorced him after he left. And then a very good friend who I'm still really close to, Naisa. She was there on a Fulbright. So Naisa's a Black American graduate from Howard University and HBCU and Howard Law School. And she had a Fulbright. So we were both these fully funded, whimsical Black girls with natural hair. It was just like a sister that I had during that whole
Mhm.
time. So that was really lovely. Me and Naisa spent most of our time going out to eat and looking for what's our social thing we're going to do tonight. Just really being honest, we really struggled to be productive with the opportunity, which looking back, I think is perfectly fine. We had just graduated from college. We had done the most in college. We were about to go to grad school and we just needed a break. So I definitely am so glad that I did end up dropping out of that graduate program and that I took a break before I went to school. One of the things that happened during my year in Ghana is I started to get imposter syndrome about going to business school. I didn't have much of a problem with the idea of going to the Kennedy School. My whole background was volunteering, nonprofit stuff. I even wrote my senior thesis on Black women and social enterprise. And this is way before people were really talking about it. This is 2006. But when it came to business school, I was like, I'm not ready. So I reached out to Harvard Business School to ask if I could take 2 more years off to work. And they were like, sure. Like, what kind of job are you thinking about? And I'm like, oh, I would love to do Teach for America. And they were like, no. They were just like, that's more of who you already are. You need to go
Mm.
work in industry or consulting or banking. And I busted my butts to get a management consulting internship. And because I was already accepted into HBS, it was almost, I don't want to say effortless because once again, some things are just easier for other people, but it was basically
Mm.
effortless to get interviews with McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. And I studied, self studied using the book Case in Point, and I was so bad at doing the case interviews. I tried to drop out of an interview mid interview because it was going so badly. Why was
Oh
I
my
so
goodness.
bad at it? One, I'm not really a linear thinker.
Mhm.
Two, I didn't have enough real world work experience to have good context for the questions they were asking me. I'll give you an example. One of the case study questions was, if we decrease the price of our flat screen TVs by 10%, how much of the market do you think we could capture? And I was like, I don't see why we can't capture 100% of the market. That's a completely unrealistic answer, but I had no context. I had never even bought a TV or
Yeah.
sold one TV, but I was sure if we decreased our prices by 10%, we could capture 100% of the market, meaning every single TV in the entire world would be sold by our companies. And that's one of the reasons why they do suggest you have some full-time work experience before you go to business school is you don't know what you don't know. I still was able to
Mhm.
do well at HBS once I found my stride and could take electives, but my first year academically was tough. I received a letter of
Mhm.
academic concern, which is a few steps away from getting kicked out. So academic concern is the first step. Academic probation is the next step, and then getting kicked out is the next step. And some of my friends did get asked to leave, and they came back later to finish their degrees, but it was challenging, particularly finance 1 and 2 were challenging for me. I was the bottom student, one of the 10 worst students in each class. The reason I know is they let you
Yeah,
know you are one of the
yeah.
10 worst students in the class, and here's where in the 10 you are. And they even had a little note. Kaneisha is not prepared to take any additional finance classes. Not that I wanted to, but basically like
Yeah.
barred from taking any more finance classes. And I was top of my class at
Mhm.
HBS for accounting. I got a 1, which is the top 15 students in the class. But finance, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I also
Mm.
struggled in operations management. I don't have good spatial reasoning. So, all of those things about throughput time and pulley systems and
Yeah.
factories, I cannot wrap my mind around which way does the pulley go. To show you how much that's not who I am, A, I get lost all the time. If I'm driving, I'm lost. I'm paying attention, but I have something, I think they call it geographical dysphoria, where to me, sometimes while I'm driving, even if it's in my own neighborhood, I come to an intersection and I'm like, okay, what's the next turn? And what starts happening is the intersection starts rotating. So I'm like, nothing's where it's supposed to be. And it reminds me of what it must be like for people with dyslexia, where the letters start moving around on the page and you're just like, I know how to read, but I can't. And it's, I know where I live, but I don't. And that's an ADHD thing, is being bad at directions. I'm not saying all ADHDers are bad at directions, but many of us are. And then also spatial reasoning is another deficiency a lot of times in the ADHD brain. And so I just couldn't, I don't know how many things are going to come off the factory and I just can't figure it out. However, I did better in that class because I went to the professor office hours more than I did with finance.
Yeah, so that's amazing. To be honest, I wasn't great at those classes either, and I'd like to think I'm pretty good at lots of things.
Yeah.
So spatial awareness is not my strong suit either. But yeah, you started touching upon the experience of being an MBA and just the whole experience. Reflecting back on that, how did it shape you? What do you feel like you took away from that experience? And how has it informed the way that you're living your life today?
Yeah, I will say I just had a really wonderful graduate school experience. I would say the hardest part of my time at Harvard Kennedy School was the social part because I was in the joint degree program. So I wasn't in the MPP, I was in the MPA. And there was a lot of cool joint degree MPAs that were my friends and very nice to me. But I was the only Black person in the whole MPA program. I was, as far as I could tell, the only person who came from a low income, I don't even want to say a low income background because my parents weren't low income, but the neighborhood in which I grew up in was low income. And so that was alienating for me. So the people who were closest to my age and all the other Black students in the whole school, they were in the MPP program or the mid career program. So people were kind of like, do you even go here? That was hard for me. I really liked my classes. I had friends, but it was hard not being in the core program at Harvard Kennedy School as a Black
Yeah.
woman. I will venture to say, I think I might be the first Black joint degree between Harvard Business School and Harvard Kennedy School. Actually, I don't think I'm the first. I think there was someone the year ahead of me for sure. So maybe I'll claim first Black one let out of college. And if
Mhm.
someone older than me, born in 1983, emerges, please let me know. Or maybe there was
You're
somebody from
from
like the 1960s or something. But as far as I know, I was the first
yeah.
let right out of college. And that was hard, but I loved my Kennedy School classes. I lived in a house with really fun people. We just had this like international house, good friends. So that was nice. But when I got to Harvard Business School, everything clicked. Everything clicked. It was like, this is where I belong. I thought I was a social entrepreneur. Turns out I'm an entrepreneur. And social entrepreneurship is my entryway because it's the bridge between volunteering and nonprofit work and just pure profit driven motive. I love business and not necessarily big business, but enterprise. And I will always be selling something. I will always be exchanging whatever it is I have, advice, encouragement, some service I can provide in exchange for money. It is still so fun for me to sell something for $49. I just got my biggest client ever, $187,200 client. It's fun for
Incredible.
me to sell. It's fun for me to be in business, to run a business. So that's where it was like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. And then also just the fact that like now I'm in the core program, there's a really strong culture at HBS. And I don't have the personality that's the core HBS personality, which I would call on the Myers-Briggs is an ENTJ. I'm an ENFP, so I'm closer to a Pippi Longstockings, Willy Wonka type personality, right? And then the personality that I think does the best at a place like HBS is an ENTJ, which is the CEO type personality. I would say secondary to the ENTJ is the INTJ, and I could imagine that is Elon Musk. He might be an ISTJ, but I do acknowledge that Myers-Briggs is basically astrology for people who have graduate degrees.
Oh,
Like, I had an amazing time at HBS. I was very exhausted and overwhelmed. I was sick very often, I think because I was
mm,
vitamin D deficient because I'm so melanated and it's so cold there. And also, we were so scared to miss school. So, one person would be sick, make the rest of us sick, and then we would just all stay sick all the time. But I traveled a lot. I made great friends. I was super involved in the African American Student Union. I'm still so close to my friends I made at HBS. I did, just being honest, I did mostly hang out with Black people. It was because it was such a special opportunity for me,
yeah.
having gone to a primarily white institution. And then at the Kennedy School, the Black students being like, we barely know you because you're not in our classes. But I also spent a fair amount of time with my section, and I'm in a WhatsApp group still for ASU. I'm still in a WhatsApp group for my section. Just last week, I had a question about equity compensation. I posted it, and within 15 minutes, I had two section mates message me to be like, how can I help? And I had one call me and talk to me for 45 minutes to
Wow.
explain to me from scratch, not making me feel stupid, what's normal for equity compensation for early employees, what's excessive. I have done a fairly good job of keeping in touch with my ASU friends and my section. And by good job, I literally mean letting them help me. I don't mean, oh, I go out to dinner once a week or anything like that, but just letting them know what I'm up to, letting them help me, being there for people when they want advice or encouragement, celebrating people when good things happen for them. And yeah, and going to my reunions, I do recommend people go to your reunions, even if you feel like you don't want to go, or you feel like you're not going to fit in, or you feel like you're not as successful as you should be, or that you could be, or that you're not as successful as your classmates. Like, really, we're all people, and it feels very good to go back and reminisce and reconnect and realize, oh, I didn't know you very well while we were in school, but like, I like you, you can make some new friends actually. So I
That's
very much
amazing.
look forward to my reunions. There's still some level of trepidation of, wow, you're literally the CEO of this Fortune 500 company. And like, I work out of my house. Maybe he works out of his house too. But in general, I'm very proud of what I've built with the art of applying. I have a wonderful lifestyle. My business is what is called a lifestyle business, and I do own the domain lifestylebusinessschool.com, .org, and all the other dot whatever. So it's very likely I
Mm,
will start some sort of company teaching people how to run a business like I have, because
yeah.
I've built a great life. I paid off my student loans in 7 years. I'm able to pay myself a six-figure salary, some years a multi six-figure salary. I just personally don't really need $500,000 a year. I wake up when I want to every single day. I stop working when I want to every single day. There are whole months at a time where I work 10 to 20 hours a week. I'm
Mm,
about to go to Europe for 2 weeks, and my team is going to run the company while I'm gone. I went on medical leave for 6 weeks, and
wow.
my team ran the company while I was out. So I think I have an amazing lifestyle, and I would recommend this to anyone who feels very unhappy in corporate America or in jobs. You might be a better fit for working for yourself, but I am the type of person to recommend people try this lifestyle entrepreneurship journey on the side first, because it's too stressful sometimes to be financially stressed. I'm at a point where even if I have a bad business year, I feel pretty confident everything will be okay. But mainly because of my access to capital that I gathered a lot of during the good times. But in general, the art of applying runs off of the cash we generate. So that's the difference. A lifestyle business is not driven usually by debt or by outside investment like venture capital. It's usually what's called a bootstrapped business, which isn't a great term for it because it's actually impossible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So we definitely don't want to put ourselves in an impossible situation, but it's a business that's driven by actually making money and then using the
Mm,
money you make to pay yourself and have a good lifestyle. So the biggest priority is not to make as much money as possible, is to figure out what kind of lifestyle do I want? What's my dream lifestyle? I lived out of Airbnbs and worked out of WeWorks for 4 months in Barcelona and had 5 boyfriends, and it was amazing. I don't even
mm, look at you
remember
sharing.
what the question was.
Well, I was asking you about business school and how like your life has been shaped by that experience. So thank you for sharing that story. I think it's important and it can be hard when you're around so many go-getters
Yeah.
to wear the vulnerability of being a human. And it's amazing how your business school experience was able to set you up to be able to have a lifestyle that you were able to adjust in so many different ways. It sounds like you found the right business for you and it's accommodated the things that you could not foresee. I know for me, a lifestyle business wasn't even on my mind. What advice do you have for people who are thinking about business school because it feels like the right next step, but truly want to ask you the question of how it fits into your human arc as a
Mm.
person? Because I know for me, like I said, I was coming out of private equity and it felt like this is just what I have to do. And I didn't fully appreciate that life happens, that life is not linear.
My number one piece of advice is it's okay to not live up to your potential. I'm pretty sure in astrophysics or physics itself, the only way to live up to your potential is to completely explode and use up all the fuel. So it's totally okay to not live up to your potential. I would say very few people do. And the people that do live up to their professional potential have done it at the expense of their health, their mental health, and their relationships. I will say that I admire the amount of dedication that major A-list actors and superstars and athletes put into their craft. And I used to want to be one of them. And I used to be told by people, very famous people that I would encounter, you have it, like you're one of us. And one thing I've learned is you may not be built to fully achieve your potential. And that doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world or even a bad thing. It might be that you're like, I could be a multi-millionaire or 100 millionaire, but I'm actually okay making 200K a year. I'm feeling actually pretty good there and being able to do whatever I want. So that's the first thing I would say. There have been years where I've made 30K, 50K, and felt like, ooh, like I'm failing. I'm not living up to my potential. But I was both stubborn and persistent and steadfast in believing when this works, it's going to work. Just know that life ebbs and flows. This sounds a little morbid, but there are way worse things that are going to happen to you in your life than not living up to your potential. I've been through some really hard things and some very traumatic things. And I know a lot of my clients and the type of people I attract have been through some very traumatic things as children, adolescents, adults, horrible personal losses. I have too. Life will give you enough challenges to where you don't need to pile on to those challenges with negative self talk, such as, I should be doing more. I should be further by now. I'm not living up to my potential. I'm meant for more, but I'll never get there. I'll never get the recognition I deserve. And the reason I know these phrases is because they're things I've said to myself. I will say that once I got diagnosed and medicated for ADHD, 80% of those thoughts disappeared. So that was super interesting because no one told me that could happen. I think what was happening is that my brain was understimulated. That's the issue with ADHD, is an understimulated brain. Negative thoughts were the chewing gum of my brain. And so
Mhm.
once I had enough dopamine, once I had the right brain chemicals, or at least closer to the right brain chemicals, my brain wasn't scanning the environment for chewing gum. Let's get
Mhm.
into trouble. Let's make some drama. Where's some adrenaline? Where's some attention? Where's some novelty? That is how it works, but it brought it way down. So a lot of that negative thinking went away. Some of it is there, but nothing like it was before I was diagnosed, medicated, and ADHD therapy. So that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is if there is somebody who has a piece of what you want, and if they charge to help people, and you can pay them without being financially strained, do it. I have paid for things that I'm sometimes embarrassed to admit, but when I look back, I got results. I paid $9,000 in 2017 to learn how to get more clients and to learn how to sell on the phone. And in the 8 weeks I was in their program, I made $107,000. And in the previous 8 weeks, the year before, I had made $7,000. So I knew, whoa, this helped me. So then I signed up for a $60,000 to $70,000 commitment for a year. In the year I worked with that organization as a student, I made $1 million. There is no denying I made $1 million in the exact year I was working with them. It
Mhm.
was a very stressful year, but I did make the money. Another thing I paid for was after my divorce, I took a year off of dating and I didn't date at all. And I had a friend that I had met in the business coaching program, and she had a love coaching program. And I was like, I've read every book. I've been the dating advice writer for the HBS student newspaper, every YouTube video. I've read the books for the guys. I've read the books for the women. I don't know what to do. And so I signed up for her program and I paid $7,000 for a Find the Love of Your Life program. And I did all the work and I showed up to all the sessions and was really eager and I did what they told me to do and I opened my heart and I was vulnerable and I believed it would work. And in that program, I met my now boyfriend that I've been with and lived with for 4 years, and who's like an enmeshed part of my family, and I and his. And because I picked it out, I know an engagement ring is coming and that we're getting married. And like, we're so
Mhm.
happy and
Mhm.
nerdy and neurodivergent and so happy and in love. And he was there for me when I had my surgery. We met April 2020, and then I had my surgery September 2020, and him and my sister and my dad took care of me. So all that is to say is if you have the means to do so, because we don't always, but if someone has a piece of what you want, you don't have to want their whole life, because sometimes somebody's good at one thing but not at the other stuff. Pay them and do what they say as long as it aligned with your values and your ethics, because at least for me, school has been a great vehicle for achieving my goals as well as paying people to coach me and be my mentor. So it's okay to not live up to your potential, whatever people think your potential is. And it's also okay for there to be ebbs and flows and to be like, why am I so broke right now? You're not going to be broke forever as long as you don't keep doing the same things forever. And then number three, if there's someone who has what you want and they will accept payment for helping you, pay them, because
Yeah.
it's been effective for me.
That's a great segue to my last question because everyone who's watching this video is thinking, should I pay the art of applying? As I think about going to grad school, as they're thinking about that decision, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about? And why do you think the offering that you provide is so unique in comparison to all the other MBA
Yeah.
admissions folks out there?
Yeah. What makes us different is a very involved founder who is not a solo practitioner, which is fine. But a lot of admissions consulting firms on the college level and the grad school level are run by individuals who are both running the business and going to serve you and help you apply to school. I like that I have a team of consultants because my personality and my experiences are not necessarily the right fit for everybody. So we have a variety of industry experience, schools people have gone to, expertise, and everyone gets a little bit of time with Kaneisha and some interaction with Kaneisha, but I'm not the gatekeeper or the single point of failure possible for their application process. Because what happens if your coach disappears on you in a single person company? What happens if they get sick? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I create content like this. I'm open, I'm vulnerable, I'm candid, I'm probably pretty polarizing. The people who aren't going to like me, they're not going to come be a client. They probably didn't watch past 3 minutes of the video. So I would say also just I have such a strong personality. What you see is what you get. If you're enjoying watching this video, you'll enjoy being in our program. You do got to do work.
Mhm.
It's not just watching videos, right? Another thing that makes us different is we don't advise people to try and be someone you're not. We're actually going to advise you to be the most authentic version of you. We get outstanding, outrageous, unrealistic results. It is very common for our clients to get full scholarships to the schools they apply to. It is very common for our clients to get into their dream schools the first time around. We help people with very low GPAs. We help people with really strong GPAs. We help people with very low test scores, with strong test scores. And we also really focus a lot on celebrating what's working right, because it's so easy to focus on what's not working. And don't even take it from me. Watch the dozens and dozens and dozens of videos of our clients sharing about their experience, real people. So take it from our clients. If you've enjoyed this video or the other videos on our YouTube channel, then you'll enjoy being our client. And we have our application accelerator, which is our signature program, the comprehensive program. David, you went through that experience in the predecessor way. It didn't exist when you were a client. And then we also have the Art of Applying Academy, which is a new platform I created that's very tech enabled in our move to use technology to make all of this expertise I have a lot more accessible. The price may change, but it's currently $97 a month. The price may even go down as I'm able to apply more technology to make it more efficient, or it might go up as I add a lot more stuff to it. We haven't even had a whole year of the academy, and we had Brady get into Harvard Kennedy School with a full scholarship, a young underrepresented minority male. Melissa, a white female, got into Columbia MFA in theater and production with a $100,000 scholarship. And then Miriam got into 2 PhD programs. We're waiting on the funding for one of them, but one of them is full funding. And this is people paying $97 a month for the platform I created. So there's something for everybody at the Art of Applying. If you have more resources and want more handholding, Application Accelerator is for you. If you're more self-driven and your resources are a lot tighter, then the Art of Applying Academy is the right fit for you. So at this point, we're really poised to grow a lot. We've got a lot of what's called working capital, a lot of cash on hand to apply to what's working. We have an outstanding consultant team, an outstanding admin back office team, a leader who has energy. And then we have this army of amazing clients, such as yourself, who not only generously filmed interviews, but they're still referring people to us a decade later. So I just want to say I am so grateful to you for finding the Art of Applying, for doing the work, for getting the Knight-Hennessy scholarship, getting into Stanford, getting into Harvard Business School, getting into Harvard Kennedy School, for fielding how many LinkedIn messages you get, and for making time today to do this interview, even though we haven't seen each other on camera since 2017. So just thank you, David. We'll know each other forever.
Well, it definitely feels like a community for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well,
Well,
awesome.
thank you.
If there's anything I hadn't touched on that you want me
Yeah.
to touch on, but
I would say other things people probably don't know about me is that I have a podcast called Scale Your Joy. I published 20 episodes and then took a break, and it's been years now. But those 20 episodes are still delicious and very good. We've got episodes like how to find and keep a mentor with my very wealthy mentor that I found on the internet. And we've got an episode where a young woman with a college application business where I'm coaching her. We have an episode where I'm surviving the Texas snowpocalypse and talking about preparation tips because I'm a bit of a prepper. So I have a podcast called Scale Your Joy that you can listen to wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And then I'm working on writing my first novel. I've had literary agents tell me, send me the book when it's ready. That does not mean I'm not going to get rejected. I might get rejected 47 times before I find someone who will publish my book, but I will find someone to publish the book. And I feel very confident, even if it takes 10 years, that it will get turned into a limited series or a movie, and that it will do really well and help a lot of people who don't realize that they are neurodivergent, who are just like, I'm so smart. Why isn't it showing up in my life? It's because you have autism. It's because you have ADHD. It's because you have OCD or something. And help people realize that you were in the gifted and talented programs in elementary school and middle school, and you're like, but why am I not gifted and talented anymore? You still are, but you're dealing with a very real neurodevelopmental disorder or disability. So lots and lots more people are getting diagnosed, not because of TikTok, but because the pandemic changed all of our lives. And for those of us who were coping with a whole universe of strategies to keep up and achieve, we didn't have access to those same things anymore. And so the system failed. We burned out, we got fired, we shut down and realized, oh, something's wrong. Those are things people may not know about me, is Scale Your Joy and my novel. So yeah.
Incredible. A true Renaissance woman.
Yes, I am definitely a Renaissance woman. Thank
Love
you.
it. I love it. I love it.
Well, this was awesome, David. Thank you so much. I think people will really enjoy this.
That's great. I'm glad I could be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Are you ready to take your application process to the next level? The Art of Applying helps you get into the graduate school of your dreams and get money to pay for it. Book a free quick call from the link in the description to get started. And subscribe to our channel for more application tips and success stories.